And we're on. Welcome. Let's see. As usual, everyone, welcome to Wednesday Night Fly Tying. We're happy to be back. I'm rolling solo tonight with our featured guest, Jon Ray. And if you could let me know you can actually hear me, it's nice to know all the wires and plugs are hooked up correctly. I was very early set up today, which was kind of nice, even before Johnny showed up. So I was able to get some good pictures taken and make Johnny's flies look really nice. So, kind of a cool thing going on tonight. We actually haven't had a sponsor before. Brian's texting me right. I could mute my computer here. So Jon Ray, if you guys don't know of Mangled Fly, one of our probably best guide friends, I would say, at the shop. Steelhead, trout, muskie, bass. Did I miss anything?
Not really.
Not really.
You know, bluegills. I like them all. Whatever's biting, let's do it.
Crush those bluegill.
Yeah.
But John is actually a sponsored tire, would you say?
Yeah, Loon Ambassador, they call it.
Okay.
So we reached out to Loon and asked them if they could help us out and get us a little kit to make sure that we had a little extra.
Yeah, a little incentive.
Yeah.
Incentive.
We want questions.
Yes.
So
yes. So the deal, if you didn't catch it so far, is that there's a little giveaway involved tonight, and there's going to be a Loon accessory kit given away. We're going to cover what's in this in between flies. John's going to do 2 flies for us tonight, but here's the kicker, is that you need to stay tuned to figure out how to win such a cool prize. There will be details at the end of the video, and you really only have tonight to do it. So we're trying to hang on to everyone. I know, Brian. I'll turn John's mic up. So let's introduce Jon a little bit more. If you don't know, Jon Ray's been around the Northern Michigan fly guide world for quite a while, and
I had to actually think about it because I had to fill out a form. It was scary.
I think I got that form in the mail too, actually.
Like, 21 years. Oh man, where did this go?
Oh, no.
So 21 years on the big man. You know, primarily I would say, because our steelhead season takes up 6 months, that is the number one in our guide calendar.
Yeah.
You know, the number of days, I forget what it was that I added it up, but it's definitely over 100 days chasing, you know, this fish. So definitely have a lot of data, and definitely a very, you know, I know it's sheltered, but it's like seeing the big man and how it fishes and how you go in there and what is, you know, good water and what colors work the best. And so I will have like an opinion based on what I've seen, and it's not true for every river. So, and we'll kind of dwell into that about color and how my mind works on that side.
Color is one of those things. I think, I don't know, I came into the swing thing a few years ago, and I thought color was everything all the time. And then I went to the world of, let's see what I can get away with. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of back to color is pretty important. Mm-hmm. So, you know, there's a progression there, of course.
Yeah,
I think
you have a very small knit group of guides that you work with and you talk to. And for me, like, you definitely try to keep it in a family of 3 so that the information that you know doesn't like spread too far. And the number one question every day is, what color did you get them on? You know, so we'll talk about the profile, and for me, and you can tell me like how far to hold this up. Good.
You can hold it right at the vise, and I'll switch cameras for you. How about that? So
right
there we go.
Is the profile of the fly that I'm looking for, and then I'm just gonna change the color. So this little guy that we're gonna tie tonight is probably one of my early season best flies that I have, and for whatever reason, running green is gonna be, you're gonna have good success on the big man. So and we'll kind of dwell into that, and if people ask the right questions, I'll give up more and more and more, and if they don't, I'll tie really fast. So
it's all about asking the right questions, everyone. And this is a great time to mention that you can utilize the chat window down below, especially if you are a registered YouTube user. Sometimes I know people like to watch on their TV. You can also watch on your phone, but a lot of times you need to actually be logged into YouTube. And it doesn't help if you, I mean, it doesn't hurt, I should say, if you go ahead and subscribe to the Northern Angler or the Mangled Fly as well, which is, well, you know, we try to do our best. Let's see if I can hit a subscribe graphic too. Oh, yeah, look at this. We got, and then we'll hit the Loon sponsored if I can. Oh, yeah. Nice. We're giving out the love. Nice. So
can't wait to watch this later.
Awesome. Let's see. So utilize the comment section. Mm-hmm. Ask tons of questions about swinging flies in Michigan, fly design, weight, heads, rods, whatever you want, and I will shoot them over to John while we tie, basically. So,
and also, Matt, like for the viewership that is going to be watching tomorrow or the next day or whatever, and they miss this opportunity, if they add a comment to your video stream, you'll get a hold of me if you don't know the answer, and I'll feel free to log in and type away as well. So
perfect.
We'll make sure everybody's covered.
Yeah.
So
we get notification.
We got time.
Yeah, we got time. So perfect. Did I miss anything before we get going?
So. No, let's go.
All right, let's tie some flies.
All right. So the concept in my head, and by the way, if you also have not logged in and watched last week's video with Alex, there's a lot of good information in there, especially if you listen. So he mentioned when he first started tying that he wasn't very creative. And I was thinking back, and there's probably not a better streamer fisherman in my head from the guide standpoint, understanding what fish want to eat, than Alex. So he understands that he doesn't have to like create some magic. So for me, the same thing on the swing fly is that I'm going to create a profile that usually in the fall, I'm going to go to a bigger size. As the winter comes, I'm going to go smaller, and as spring goes, I'll probably even take another step smaller. So this profile for me is something that's in that 2 to 3 inch range. If you're understanding like other types of fishing, crankbait stuff, you're looking, for a size 5, 6 type, or if you're understanding spinners, same thing, size 5 blade. And that's kind of what my head thinks of when I come into this. So we're going to go through, like usually in October season, we definitely have clearer water. So we're going to do an olive and silver. And one of the things that I grabbed from the bass side, watching some really good YouTubers out there, is understanding that silver is on the bottom scale of reflective property. So when you throw silver into the river on a sunny day, it's, even though you like your flash profiles, it's going to give you the least amount of bling. So coppers and golds are going to shine brighter than silver. So this fly runs off of more of a silver platform, and I kind of start all my flies like, how deep do I want to get, and how am I balancing my fly? So they're all going to have weight. So we're going to add weight to the bottom of this fly to start. And again, probably not good for the northern angler, but I like to tie all my swing flies off cotter pins. So shanks for me are a great platform to tie off. They just had a lot of sharp edges, and I kept breaking my thread. So I went into the cotter pin starting, and then the next question is like, well, what about a tube fly? And it's a great platform, like probably the best platform. I just can't tie it fast enough.
Sure.
So when I'm thinking from a guide fly standpoint, it's like every morning when I wake up, I tie 4 of these. And I'm out the door, and those are the colors that I think will work, and that's how I build my inventory or what worked yesterday.
Hold on. John, there's a rumor going around that you actually don't sleep. So how does that work, by the way? It's no, I mean, I think you emailed me at 5:30 this morning.
I actually waited an hour and a half. The best part about your text notification was that I could see that it was ringing out like you're busy. And I was like, oh, I could text him anytime I wanted after I saw that. So anyway, yeah, so I'm probably one of the early risers. I know a lot of guys like to come home and tie at night. And for whatever reason, when I come home at night, I'm done. And then I'll start thinking, like the brain will start going 2:33, 3:30, and I just get up and it's time to go.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how I roll. So, all right. So we're going to run off some Power Pro here. And my favorite hook is for this is an Owner 5377. I run it in the fall. I run it pretty big. You know, so the 5377 will have a tendency to bend. So the size 1 has landed everything up to 16 pounds so far this year. And the size 2 and then the size 4 is kind of where I'll lean towards later in the year. And it'll be a smaller hook, and then I can run it on a smaller profile. So I take my Power Pro and I double it. So right now I have 1 loop, and now I've just doubled it over. So I have 2 loops. So there's kind of like 4 strands here. And this will be the hardest part of my whole night tying, is if this will go smooth. So I twist it. I was just kind of like twisting it. So now I have a point. Take it through. And I'll open it up. And I'll pass it through and pull. Now I have 2 loops through there, giving that hook a little bit more support. I'll find the distance that I want to tie this, grab my thread, and I'll wrap it like a couple times, lock it in there, and then the cotter pin's nice because now I'm going to pass those ends through the big cotter pin, and now let's just start wrapping that back. And probably the most embarrassing thing you can have when you spent all day trying to get a steelhead on the swing is have this setup pull loose. And your fly is still tied to your mono, but your hook and your fish are gone. And that's kind of embarrassing. So
trim that off. You trim that off exceptionally fast, I would imagine.
Yep.
Nothing to see there.
So that little point that I brings up a valid, probably pre-question, is like, well, John, do you ever think about tying with wire? And yeah, I have tied with wire. And when wire kinks, wire will rust. And the next year when you throw that same fly in the water and a steelhead grabs it, and Ed McCoy could vouch for this, your hook is gone again. So braid, as you know, if you've ever found a lure in a tree, never breaks down. And actually mono would be fine here too. I can just control this a little bit better on Power Pro.
Sure.
So that's my thing on it. So all right, so we back the thread up. Now we're gonna start building up here, and you can use a lot of different things. Today we brought some, what is this, UV double cut chenille. So
there you go.
Boom. This is an olive. We'll just take a piece of this, and you can keep it on the card. Sometimes it's just like if you're tying in front of other people, you lose it and it falls on the floor. So you just cut a piece. Wrap our thread forward, come through, and just palmer this.
That's pretty long.
Yeah.
It's longer than I'd see with, UV polar chenille.
Yes. So this brings up, this fly for me has changed over time, and it used to probably, I don't even know if I had that step when we started, but this has been around for a couple years. So anyway, I used to run marabou next, and I started looking at my flies in the water, and it was all based on how I was building my head and how big my head was.
Sure.
Is that it felt like the vortex of water was passing through the head and going around the fly and then pulling that marabou back into the fly. And I don't know if marabou changed or if my style of tying changed, but I couldn't get the marabou to flap the flash anymore. So then I went to Creffer, and one of the better flies out there tied is the Bad Hair Day, and how that makes flash work. So anyway, I don't quite tie it in that way, but this gave basically my flash a place to bounce, and that's what I was looking for. So I'll just take a nice little hunk that's actually a little bit small, and grab a little bit more here.
And while you're doing that, we did have a question that you covered briefly about why 2 pieces of Power Pro versus 1. And I think, you kind of have to see how limp one piece can really be to answer that. And you really want to make sure that hook stays behind your fly, I think is kind of the goal there.
Yeah, so the double piece was a trick that I learned when I was in Alaska and we were fishing for cohos. And the guides would tie their flies with the double piece of Power Pro. And it gave the hook a little bit more rigidness behind the fly. It wasn't dropping all the way down. And then that brought up like, well, heck, I'm going to try that little bite wire stuff and jewelry wire.
Sure.
And then you saw that stuff would kink. So then you come back to Power Pro and then you start doing the double loop. And then you find the right hook that will pass through there, and they all don't work. But when I swing the fly, especially in a fast current, that hook's going to pop right back up. But in a soft current, like if you and I went fishing tomorrow, we're going to hunt the slowest water I can find. So that hook's going to drop down underneath the fly, and that fish is going to come up and grab behind the fly. And, maybe everybody watching the video right now understands like how steelhead feed. And maybe there's someone that's not. So let's talk about that real quick.
I think that's a great
Alex talked about it in your last video. Again, watch that one. A lot of good information. And he talked about like rainbows come in behind the fly. Brown trout want to kill that head first. Rainbows, I always think of it as like a curiosity factor. Because they love to eat popcorn for a living, which for me is egg flies. But they get curious by other things. And they'll come in and investigate. And they almost want to just like barely put it in their mouth. It's not like they have that attack instinct, and we've streamer fished a lot here, especially on the Mana, and there's a lot of rainbows in that lower end, and you hardly ever see one. I'm not saying you don't see one, but corresponding to brown trout that like to kill things and chase things, rainbow trout are hard. So that's where that fluttering little slow presentation, is key. So, and I think they said it, like Alex might have said it too, that Atlantic salmon, swing as fast as you can. Steelhead, how slow can you swing it? And that's why that hang down presentation is so vital.
Yep.
Because they want to come in and just investigate. So, all right. So we're going to line up our craft fur here to the length of our tail. So we just got to trim a little bit off. Add that. And tie that in there. So now we have a good base, and you could probably swing that fly and it would work just fine. All right. This year, the motivation was, changing. We had a little bit different color water this year, a lot clearer. So we kind of started trying some different blends, and we found that this Moonlight works really good, which is a little blend of silver, black, and pearl. And we're going to probably just look for, we want like 4 or 5 pieces of silver. So we're going to get rid of a little bit there. I like to put this right on the side. Pull. And then flip it over. And we're just going to grab it all again. Come up here. Come to the back, kind of look where our hook is. And what I'll do is I'll hold it tight, and I don't want to come in and just hit it. So I'll pull it back, and I'll give it a little, and I'll bounce my scissors back and forth. And that just gives me a little bit of
taper.
There you go.
Yeah.
Feel free to add in the words as I stumble on camera.
I'd say you're doing better than I am. I don't know. I set off a little flustered tonight, I guess.
You don't have Brian here to make the humor.
That's right.
Right?
He's my color commentary guy. Really.
We need him in the background. Is he logged in yet or said anything?
What I meant to do is get a cardboard cutout of him and just have him in the back and just, maybe on one of those Roombas so it looked like he was walking around or something. Some Home Alone shenanigans,
Right.
If we're going to reference some holiday movies.
Russ Madden influenced me a lot when we work together. So good or bad, I guess you could say, but a lot of good because the guy can tie a really good fly. So he always called this next move the Mohawk. All right, so we're going to do a little Mohawk now. So I've grabbed this little variant, the micro pulsator strip in black and olive to give us a couple little stripes here. And we're going to we again measured our fly, and this is going to go right over the top. So what I'll normally do is pull the hair back and come in with the scissors, and that way the next piece still has those long guard fibers. Introduce that in there and just kind of lock in that strip. And that is a weak point in the fly, that point right there, if you tie in rabbit that way. But it seems to last. A lot of my flies will last longer than I need them to, so I can get 2 or 3 seasons out of a fly. So, all right. Now, how this fly always came about and what we used to call it was the perch. So this is, I believe they call this Fire Tiger. So this stuff, for me on the big man, is money. So I'm just going to keep that over the top. Pull it back. We'll do the same thing here. All right. So the biggest thing for me is color and understanding kind of what fish see. And again, every day in the guide boat, you know, you're getting a call from another guide like, hey, how you doing? You know, what'd you get them on? What color is always,
right?
Not where, what color, you know? So that for swinging flies or egg fishing, what color? So for me, like hot spotting, and last year we talked a lot about smallmouth, and there's definitely steelhead and smallmouth are my 2 biggest, like, understanding like UV tendencies. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times in these flies, the next part for me is setting up what this light will show me. All right, so we're going to use the UV light to solidify the glue at the end.
Plasma.
The plasma edition.
I don't know where they're going to go from here.
Anybody else, because it'll fry their eyes. And it's actually, when you put the glue in there, you'll feel the heat on your thumb.
I should have brought, you know, like welding glasses to put on.
So anyway, this feather is hot. And what do I mean by hot? So if I hit it with the light, you'll get, and you maybe probably can't see it.
Up a little bit higher there, John.
Here's the other thing that I'll do. Like, can you see the eyeball on the fly?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
That's hot, right? Now it looks normal. Does it get hot again? All right. That for me is what hot means. So from here on, what I'm trying to do is develop like the attractor to the fly. So if you fish yarn, chartreuse glow bug yarn is a hot color, you know, and then there's other colors that are duller or dead. In under certain conditions, you need to change that. So this part of the fly right here, the flash, will always stay consistent, and now I'll start to change this part, the attractor part, the part that brings steelhead to the fly. So today we're going to run a hot feather, and if water is clear like it was this year, I'll usually run a duller feather, but today we're just going to give it a little bit of color. So
and while John's wrapping this, if you haven't used guinea before, it's not always the friendliest. You know, it's not quantity, it's quality usually. And you'll notice he's tying in at the tip, which is really key. It has a very thick stem as you work down that feather. And a lot of times you just get 2 wraps. If you have a sizable feather, it's 3 wraps, and it's a great feather for a hot spot. It's got that unique pattern that gives you the barring.
I'm going to tie off my thread here real quick because I'm going to spin it around. So how I tied it in on the tip is I always leave like a big section at the end to kind of lock it in a little bit. So when I'm wrapping, it doesn't spin out.
Right.
So right now I'm going to go in with my scissors and try to hit that right in the middle so that I get a little bit more. This can be like, okay, I got to tie it in again, step.
We did have a question if...
no,
boom.
we did it right.
Yeah, okay.
So
I thought you said, uh-oh.
No. Not on camera.
We did have a question from Wayne in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
If this fly has a specific name.
Yeah, so the name of it, like amongst the guide crew. So again, at Mangled Fly, if you're like, I get the phone call or the text, what are you getting them on? I'll say the perch.
Okay.
You know, so for me, it's been around in my box, you know, probably over 10 years. So it's changed a little bit. This year, my next step was how I dulled it out a little bit. We used to run like a really hot part.
Okay.
But I've never seen the big man this clear before.
Right.
So I'm going to talk about how I dulled it out this year. But it is just basically a perch. And again, the big man, if you had to think like a trout angler, there's a lot of darters in the big man. So if you go off that or the goby size of a bait fish, which you learn a ton if you have Kevin's book.
You should.
Yes, it's a must buy. If you haven't got it on your Christmas list yet, do it. Ann's Miller's books on bugs and Kevin Feenster's books on bait fish.
Yep.
So darters are probably the most common bait fish that we have. So it was always something like, how do I imitate that if I was thinking like a trout guy? And then how the color scheme started is that the guys coming out of certain boat launches throwing crankbaits were always throwing green. And I was like, all my swing flies were orange, black, and copper.
Right.
Right? With a little bit of like Kelly green. But I didn't have anything like heavy green, you know, so that's kind of where this came out, or I'm motivated by gear guys a lot.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't scroll through
you need
colors
this much
of things.
ice dub to get this done.
That's the amount for one fly, right?
Yes.
That's a lot comes out through the combing process.
Yes. It all starts
or
over.
use a vacuum on that, is that right? It's
all right. So what I do is I take about this much, so a little pinch in each finger, and I bring them together, and I go on the side of it, and I'll just like do a light wrap, and I'll lock in, and another wrap, and I'll pull it back, and I'll come in here. And a lot of this is just going to pull out as extra, and we're going to worry about that in a second. All right, this color here was 2021's favorite color for minnow patterns for me. So this, I always assumed was a dead color.
Let me hold that down just a little bit. Oh, the Senyo's Laser Dub, light olive.
Light olive. And
Okay.
I always thought it was a dead color until I hit it with the light. And
With
it's
the
got
plasma.
a mix of a little bit of chartreuse and a little bit of orange in it. So we're going to take this out, and we're going to do that pinch. And if you watch last year's video how I tie bait fish flies, I'll usually leave it that long, but that's too long of a fiber for this head. So we're going to put it in our hand and pull. Bring it back together and pull. Bring it back together and pull. So we're cutting the fibers basically in half. All right, so now we're going to take that, bring it up and down, lock it in, pull on it, push it back, split them. And what that did for me, like under the UV light, is you're going to still see the chartreuse under it, but you're going to see the front part of the fly is duller. Before, when we have dirtier water, I'll go straight chartreuse. I'll also do, like, if you grab iced up orange, that's a dead color. It won't glow.
Right.
And I can put that behind the other green as well if I need, like, a duller fly, if it's like a really bright day. So the fly for me flashes pretty consistent, and I'll keep just changing the head to what I need. No different like if you and I were fishing and we were bead fishing or
Sure.
glow bug fishing. we would change our colors based on either A, how we were doing, or B, based on how much light was like coming into the river. And that's what I believe on the swing flies earlier in the year. And I don't take them to think, like when I'm swinging these flies, steelhead don't take that as an egg fly.
Right.
Like an egg sucking leech doesn't exist to me in the world. You know, it's more like that hot spot, that color attracts them to it.
Right.
And the movement gets them. So we're going to finish off our head here. Add a little glue. Hit it with the light. Look away. Cough. All right. Cut that.
What thread were you using there?
Oh, great question. I think it's the Danville stuff. Yep, Danville.
Again
210.
on the Danville.
What?
Again on the Danville.
Yeah, you have to.
It's popular.
Have to. Take my little comb here, and I'll start pulling on it a little bit, just kind of picking it apart. And now what I'm looking for, like when I put this in the water, it'll drape too far back. So now I'm just going to come in and clean it up.
If you were to give that fly a measurement, how long would you say that is, John? Pinky length?
So for me, it's very comfortable. Like, again, back to the popcorn.
Sure.
Like, they like smaller things, and it's interesting. Like, if I'm gonna just talk gear real quick.
Yeah.
So king salmon anglers are very happy with a deep diving junior, right? A storm lure about that long. They love to throw that.
Sure.
Steelhead really won't bite that. So they'll run like this big. Like if you look at all the gear guys, and again, I'm heavily motivated by watching them, and I love to figure out how to do it on the fly side, is that I want it about that big. And yes, like if you huck it long enough, and you talked about earlier, like swinging, like what can I catch them on?
Sure.
You'll get one on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But usually that size and smaller are the most productive.
Okay.
And this year, especially since our numbers were so low, you had to come into the little bit smaller side because you needed a bite.
Right.
So, but.
And I think part of that is, you know, you're appealing to a larger quantity of fish going to a little bit smaller fly.
Yep.
You know, part of the swing thing is you're looking for a special fish.
Yep.
And you can find a really special fish sometimes if you're willing to throw just a big fly.
Yep.
But, you know, big fish eat small stuff too.
Yep.
So, you know, maximize that. But it's good. I think it's great to give people kind of a range at least for where they're looking to be. And,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes I think folks are surprised by how small they are. They're not tiny. I'd call it medium-sized fly if I were going to, you know, I've heard it called, you know, a lot of things, but pinky length is a great indicator, you know, kind of where you should be.
And I'll say this fly right here, tons of confidence, October through deer hunting season. And then I notice at deer hunting season on the big man, I need to go smaller than this to have
Really?
Yeah, more success. So, and I know that's my weak point in my box is making sure that I have these colors even smaller. And then normally they have to be heavier as well, and they have to get in there quicker.
Right.
So, and part of the thought process, and I struggled with this for years, was you watch the videos of people casting, and you know, you're watching like Ed Ward and, you know, struggling on names right now, but other guys in the videos,
Sure,
they're just banging casts. And you're just like, oh man, I need to do that. I got to cast the whole line.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's not where the fish are. So that's the process that's really changed everything for me, is that I understand more that the fish are right there. And you put the fly where the fish are, and then you get the bite. You know, so, and it's just like you have to control your depth with the lines that we have today. Is so easy to do that. And then you just have to put the fly that they're interested in looking at or playing with,
Sure,
you know, into the zone.
well, that's a perfect lead in from for a question we just got from Ben, actually, because you happen to also be an SA pro.
Yes.
And his question is, how do you decide between using an intermediate versus a floating head?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what's your, and second part of that question is your leader setup.
Okay. So for the intermediate, it's pretty much always on the rod. So, all right, back up a little bit. If on the big man, if I have normal flow, which I'm looking usually is between 1500 CFS or greater,
Right.
I know I can run the intermediate. So typical in the fall, it's about 1800. So at 1800 CFS, the line's going to work great. I got enough pull on the line to give me a really nice slow swing. The reason I started running so many intermediates is that there's so much water on the big man that's not, and Ed's going to have a way better word than I, and you can probably help me with here, but it's not flat. It's so interchanging
Sure.
that the intermediate broke through that and then gave me a better track.
Sure.
So when I find glass water, and again, if Matt and I have the day off tomorrow and we're going fishing, we're going to fish every single spot I'm looking for is glass. And then I'm throwing a floating line because glass water doesn't move. There's not a lot of movement there. So I need as much surface pull on the
Right.
line as I can to get that fly to move. So intermediate leader setup. Typically what I'm tying here, and again, I love the cotter pin setup, and I wanted to cover this real quick. You have to tie a fixed loop knot to the cotter pin. You can't do a clinch. If you tie a clinch to a cotter pin, it'll break. If you tie a loop, you're good to go. So I usually run 12 to 16 pound fluorocarbon. And the first section for me will usually be about 3 foot, 20 pound to a swivel. And then depending on the depth of the water. So if the water is deep and I want the fly to sink, because my fly is weighted, it's going to sink faster than my sink tip, I'll go longer leader. So the fly gets down deeper. And if I'm like, kind of want to hover some wood, I'll bring it up to what I think my sink tip is hovering. And so my total leader length will be somewhere between 4 and 6 feet, depending on the run that I'm fishing.
Okay.
And it's real easy for me to cut at the swivel and then lengthen or shorten depending where I am. But typical days of swinging, I'll usually hunt about the same water depth anyway. It's only when I'm really struggling that I'm like, man, I got to go fish a 10-foot hole. Okay. You know, and then let her plunge and let her get deep, and I'll go a longer leader with a heavy fly.
So to sum that up, Ben, slower water, you want the extra pull of a floating line because you're a lot of times the pull of the current is stronger at the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And that will introduce the right speed to your fly. If you want to slow things down, you go to a sinking line like the intermediate.
Yep.
That's kind of how I would just simplify, but everyone should probably replay this and write some of those notes down. Well, not specifically, but to take away is get a baseline for your fishery. Even if you're not on the water, there's these great tools that we have from the USGS or sometimes even private editions where there's a gauge on a river where you can figure out, kind of what the character of that river is in different times of the year, and you can adjust from that. For me, it's all about if you have a baseline for what the flow is, then the adjustments are gravy.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, this is high for this time of year. I know I can do this. This is low for this time of year. I can do this. So
for all the viewers that we have right here, you're getting so much extra bonus material because I'm about to just go off real quick.
Here we go. I'm going to hit, where's my record?
So what you talk about is I get a phone call from a guide every day on color. Every day when I wake up, the first thing I do on my phone is I check what's the level. What's my number? So the number dictates where the fish are going to be.
Right.
So it was great to fish the last week because we went to 2,700, and we haven't been 2,700 all year.
I don't know.
It's
a miracle almost.
So
it felt like.
all year we were sitting at lower numbers, whatever the average was, and the river was all brand new again at 27, and you were hooking fish in spots you just thought were dead. You're just like, oh my God, they're back. they're back in there. So it's just like understanding where fish go at what numbers, and then like for me, like what will swing good, so that's like my whole life is around that number, which comes from the gauge.
Sure.
So
that's great. I'm going to modify a question. Actually, we got, the question was always a green base. Is that kind of your stick to, or, what are some alternates you got?
Yeah. So color for me, like the olive, this was a sunny day color. Like the perch fly always came out when it was sunny, partly sunny. It will fish in cloudy, but then like you were running so much black and orange,
right?
Because it will just outfish this that you probably didn't go unless you were just fun fishing with buddies. You're like, oh, I want to see I catch one on this. But so this was like, you can't control the day. So yeah, I needed a sunny bait, or like
right.
Too much sun was coming in, because black and copper, like what we talked about, the flash will just bounce off. So you could tie this same fly with black on the bottom, and the flash would reflect off that black differently than it will off the olive. So that's, for me, there's two things that control, like a flash combo is like when you find one, and there's other ones out there that work great, and I run them as well. But it's like if you find silver in the bullfrog and you add it to olive, it's one fly. If you add it to black, it's another fly. And then you can change your head design, and there's endless combinations per se.
I know. Oh, there's endless variables.
Yeah. So for me, in this fly, I'm pretty much tying it olive, and then I'm changing the head based on water clarity. It's like, do I need more bright or less bright? And then when it's cloudy, rainy, or whatever, the black and copper orange stuff comes out. So
perfect. John's going to get a drink of water. I'm going to talk about what you can win if you stick with us to the end here. We're going to tie one more fly. I think we can convince John of that. So, again, video sponsored tonight by Loon Outdoors, which if you're in the sport and you haven't interacted with Loon at all, you're probably under a rock. They make great floatants, tying tools, all sorts of fun stuff. So tonight, let me hit a button here really quick, and we're going to answer some more of your questions after this. They're hooking it up with an accessory fly tying kit. So most of you already tie. You have the core stuff, right? A vise, scissors, whip finish, that stuff. But there's some tools out there that really make life easier to do more things, right? More tools, more possibilities. So tonight I'm going to run you through what's in here. The first thing is the Zippy hair stacker, which is kind of a cool design. It actually has magnets in it, and if I know one thing, it's that people love magnets. I think John has a whole room in his house where he keeps his magnet. I got him to laugh at one of my jokes. People love magnets. Don't tell me I'm wrong.
No,
but
right.
A little hair stacker in there so you can get ready for dry fly season. You also have the very popular Gator Grip dubbing spinner. So I know the fly fish food guys help design this, but you can do just about anything. It comes with two attachments. It comes with a hook and the Gator Grip, so you can grab all sorts of fun stuff. You get it comes in this great case that is extremely secure. Get the D-loop tweezers. I'm saying these all by memory, so just so everybody is impressed. D-loop tweezers, great for dubbing loops, whether you're doing marabou, rabbit, making your own brushes, any of that stuff. These have been really helpful. I even have one of our staff members even uses them for CDC. So you can do delicate stuff as well. You get the vise pawn, which is kind of speaking of magnets, look, it clicks to stuff. That's just fun. John's setting up like crazy over there. How many pairs of scissors do you got on the board right now?
I didn't realize I brought a couple extra pair. So I was packing and I was like, oh, I need a pair of scissors. And then I think
Always
every
need
fly,
more.
I went, hey, I need a pair of scissors. So
always need more.
That's what happened. I was like, I just found the one I was looking for. I was like, oh, cool, man, I got another person.
And then the last thing you got in here is kind of a dubbing tweezer. So at the end of this this next fly, I'll put up a link in the description that you can click on and basically enter your name and email in to win some cool prizes. And then the details for that is you have until midnight. So if you have a little bit of a delay, midnight Eastern now, no shenanigans. I'm going to shut it off because I can only stay up so late. You have to do it manually. And we will announce the winner tomorrow via YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Smoke Signal, Wolf, whatever.
Wolf.
You ever, what is that? Parks and Rec? I think Wolf is, you ever see that? Oh, it hits everything at once. It's facts. It's the whole thing. Anyways, enough shenanigans. I think the Russian bots are onto us already. All right. Let's see. Let's hit one or two more questions real quick. One, Brian has answered, where do you find water flow for the day? And that is Google USGS stream flow. And you can actually search by state. There's a map. There's all sorts of stuff. My favorite part is you can actually see, you can hit a link for where the gauge is. So you can see exactly where it is. And a lot of times I save them on my phone by where they are.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and we're trying to work on additional water monitoring stations as well on some of the smaller creeks. So, because our trout, that's another thing that we pay a lot of attention to is what is our level before you go trout fishing. So all that stuff. But yeah, USGS will have everything for the federal water and all their.
And then I know there's at least two we look at, or at least one on monitormywatershed. I believe it's .org.
Yeah.
Worth checking out on the CCC, kind of Upper Manistee area. Let's see. And then we had one more question about, let's see, transition flies from the egg bite to winter. Any quick tips?
Yeah, so it is very hard. Let's just throw out random dates.
Yeah,
so you
absolutely.
have October 15th. Prior to October 15th, a swing bite is pretty hard to come by.
Yeah.
And it is because, as this person understands, there's a really heavy egg influence into their diet. But it feels that if you start hunting water, that if you think about these fish that have come in early and they're sitting behind the salmon, they've probably been hooked before. All right. So they're not going to sit there any longer. They're going to get pushed out of that zone. And they're going to be more susceptible or willing then to chase, a streamer because your temperatures are so good at that time of year. So transition wise, like what flies do you run? So for me, it's all based on how much light do I have coming in. So always have an orange flavored fly, like orange in the front, hot orange and dead orange, and then this green one when it's sunny. And then I get duller than this, like one of the concepts that the one viewer brought up, like how do you change, or like what are some other color combos, is like get rid of this hot spot altogether. Like run a fly that's just dead. And you can think in your head as a trout angler, we like to think about it's a sculpin. But for me, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
It's like, I don't think that fish is like, hey, look, a sculpin. And again, this is Manistee River, so we don't have a lot of great runs we have more sand than rock. So there's not bait fish sitting in the sand. So for me, like, I think of it like, what is the fish attracted to? So you can dull it out with possum or like some of the Sanyo, like how I did that fly. If you do name some of the colors, because it's like brown or not shrimp, but light tan.
UV shrimp is. Yeah. I like that one.
You like that one?
Yeah,
there you go.
I'm a fan. Lavender.
So.
Yeah. Well, great. What are we trying next, John?
So we're gonna go down. Like first, we want to downsize. Secondly, we want to capitalize on our opportunity. So we're going to downsize. And the reason we're downsizing is because water is cold. You know, for me, like I can get away with this bigger fly when the water's warmer. So now we're going to try to tie something that's a little bit smaller. And it's also something that I start running in the winter. And it's also something that works really good in the spring. And I think it'd actually be, I know that trout spay is coming along. Like, It's getting more and more followers. And something that if you took this to, say, Hodem Pile or Mayo, and you just wanted to swing instead of strip, that this style of fly would work and this fly combination would work. So we get a lot of bait fish in the spring. A lot of it is from our salmon. So we're going to set something up, and there I'm going to show, like, I'll tie one fly, but I'll talk about how we can make it complicated or we can make it really easy. So it's just like, how much time do I have? And then what do I want to add to it? So I'm going to tie it in my head. I'm hunting slower water. So I'm going to lighten it up. And one of the things that I really like, and if you saw the smallmouth video from last year, is I do this series that I learned from Kevin Feenstra, but I just nicknamed it the Hammerhead series for after the shark. So I'm going to take 4 bead chain and I'm going to bring them here into the front. On this one, like I kind of, they call it recessed or put back my dumbbell eyes. This one I'm going to push as far forward as I can. So I'm going to kind of pull them forward. And again, I always flip them under. And that's going to, there's not going to be anything that's going to be in front of those eyes. And I always add them in first to help me out with my proportions. And then because of how I lock in my Power Pro, it helps me not have to tie over the Power Pro.
And proportions are one of those things that just...
Best scissors to cut your Power Pro.
I would take a guess at maybe the prime scissors if you're doing the Loon thing.
Yes. The prime 5 inchers are perfect.
Not the 4s.
Nope.
5s.
All right. So, Matt, we're going to kind of just take a chance here. And we're going to use a non-fly hook. And maybe this opens Pandora's box and all sorts of ugliness. But we're actually going to tie on a treble hook.
Where am I going to put all these? Hold on. Hold that up real quick. A little bit lower. You didn't prep me about this.
I know. I took a chance. So we're happy to take questions on this. This is something that I've also done for over probably 15 years.
Some hot takes here, probably.
That's all right. So the conception in my head before I did it was that this would be harmful. And it's actually not as harmful as the last hook that I tied on there. Especially if you go to the size 10 or smaller, like a 12. Bigger treble hooks, like I can get behind that argument. Like it's like having 3 of the hooks that I put on there.
Sure.
So if you debarb these, it is so easy to get these out of a fish. And they don't have, I've never had one bleed. And when they touch it, their lips like get stuck closed. And they, you know, it's not like it gets down and hooked over there.
No, because you're going to probably hook them before you get too deep, right? Yep. I mean, that's part of the idea. Anyway,
I've really liked it. And when I'm swinging flies and I get that little baby nip and it just goes doom, doom, and I'm like, that's all you got? That's my grab today? I'm like, where is my baby trebles? So then I understand. I'm like, I'm too big and they're not going to run away with it. And it's always on that temp drop. It's when I come from 40s to 30s and I'm headed down.
Sure.
Then it's like I'm in trouble. So, but when it steadies back out, then I can go back because then the fish are comfortable in that zone again. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, and I took a chance, and I was like, you know.
Well, we appreciate you trusting us with.
No problem. All right, so I did the same kind of double loop as the first fly. So I have 4 strands. This is a lighter hook, and you're already seeing that it won't bend. Like it's just going to stay there. So it's very rigid. It sits right in the material. I don't quite bring it back quite as far. loop it in there, and then bring these back. I'm only going to go back a little bit on this shank. Got your Power Pro. Now we're set. All right. So Alex talked about in his video his favorite little brush. This guy right here. Let's see if I get the name right. Bait fish brush. Is that this right one?
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it's the stiff one.
It's a stiff one.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, I left mine at home, and Matt had an extra. So
Always.
get all your bait fish brushes here. Same thing on Matt's or Alex's fly. Less is more with this material, but it gives me a place, you know, it's like I'm creating like a, what they call it, a dubbing ball. When you're doing your marabou flies. So 2 wraps, 3 wraps at the most. Come in. Lock that in. All right, so that's going to help support my flash. One of my favorite streamers when I was stripping streamers for Kings was a flash deceiver. And that was kind of like what my mind thought of when I was going to tie this fly, is that it had kind of like flash coming out of a Clouser minnow. So having the tail, like undulate, the bait fish tail, being hid then by most of the material, kind of where my head was. So we're going to use some pink. And this one is by Acrylic stuff.
There we go. Which also looks like Polar Flash.
Yes. Yep.
Kind of a twisted and straight
Yep.
blend, which
Yep.
is always a nice.
Yep.
Gives you different movements in the water, different reflections with light.
So now we're just kind of coming back, looking at the length of our fly. We're going to go just slightly past our hook length. We're going to lock that in. And then I don't know, I tied this with a lot of my smallmouth flies as well. Lateral scale, 1/69th opal.
One of my personal favorite
Yeah.
materials.
Yep.
Goes in
I know
almost
I shared
everything.
this last year, but it was so interesting how the guys, when we fished for Dorado, same for them. And a little goes a long way. So all my smallmouth flies that I like to tie usually have 2 or 3 strands. Same here. I'm just going to have that hold back. I'm going to trim that here in a second. It's the only way I know how to call this color is 6915. Blue.
I believe that's
Seafoam?
it's not seafoam. It's a little bit more green. I believe that's electric or sky blue.
There you go.
I think it's sky blue.
And this one.
We'll get to the bottom of it. Don't worry.
We'll find 6915.
I can't wait for people to call. Yeah, we.
Taper it a little bit. Lay that right on there. We'll pull this back. Lock that flash in. And come back and grab all this. You guys aren't supposed to see these scissors yet, as they're not out.
Oh, top secret.
Don't call. Tapers it automatically for you.
Man,
All right.
You
And
think
we're
they
done.
might call them
We're all
taper
set.
scissors? That's it?
I wish.
Oh,
All right.
it's like
So there's 2 ways, and I'm going to do the more difficult way, and I'll probably mess it up, but we're going to do a loop, a dubbing loop, and we're going to do it with craft fur. The other one that works really well, and Matt, I'll need a little bit of help, is the Sanyo.
It would be
Boxfur?
is it a Foxy or a chromatic?
Could be the chromatic, but it's
Is there some
Emerald
flash in it?
Shiner.
Yeah, it's chromatic.
Chromatic.
3-inch Senyo's
Yep.
chromatic brush
With
EP. And it's a blend of, so it's going to be, that's a blend of Arctic Fox,
Yep.
some EP fibers, and some flash.
Yep.
And it's awesome.
Yep.
It's
So
great.
then-
It's the right amount of bulk.
Yep.
It's the right amount of flash, and you get the taper to it.
Yes.
Which is,
So you could be done here. If you
Yeah.
put that
Oh,
in
yeah,
there,
absolutely.
wrap 3 times, and you'd be done. And you have yourself a little type of minnow fly. So, and that's kind of where the concept in my head. But for here, we're going to see if I can do this on camera. I did practice today, and it worked out really well. So we're going to use our shepherd's tool. And then we need a little bit of wax. Hit that there. Bring this and just kind of get rid of this real quick. Does that mess anything up?
no.
All right. Fox or craft fur gray olive gray, money. Like, as you can see, I barely used this one. All right, we're gonna come in and cut ourselves a little hunk. And one thing with craft fur, and I didn't really talk about it, but I'll pinch it in my hand, and then is it all good here?
That's great. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
Is
Perfect.
I need to get rid of this stuff. As you see, like, you know, I don't have any pets at home, and I don't have any hair on my head, but we just don't want this in there.
Really doesn't serve a purpose unless you're really trying to build bulk, and you want to do like a reverse tie.
Yep.
It's
But
like
in a
we're
dubbing
finishing
loop,
each other's sentence.
nightmare.
Yeah.
So you can also take, if you want to get everything out, take your comb, get that. All right. So what I'm going to do is just lay that on the table for a second. And then this guy here, we're going to add a little bit of flash.
Were you quick to the ripple ice fiber? It took me a little while,
Yeah,
and
no, I was actually probably a little slow.
me too. I was too slow. I was just terrified it was going to end up like Ice Wing, which
Yeah.
I
Nightmare.
I will admit I kind of detest a little bit. Unless you're making brushes,
Yes.
then Ice Wing is
Yes.
is fantastic.
Yep.
But
So we're going to add that into our mix. So we just have this big ugly mix.
Yep.
And now I'm just going to pull and separate. Pull and separate.
do you usually do these by hand, or have you played with the composite loop setup?
Yeah. So I bought the whole thing.
Okay.
And I sat up there in Muskyville and I made my own brushes. And they were never the same. It was like so hard to get consistency.
It's clump,
yeah.
nothing,
Yep.
clump, nothing.
So I didn't spend
okay, it's
enough
not
time
just
with
me.
it. Yeah, no.
Okay.
I think everybody well, there's some really good people that I see on the old Instagrams do some really cool things, but then I'm just
They're not doing it live though, John.
that's true.
It's all that
So-
editing, I think.
But then you can come into this wonderful fly shop and you can go, hey, a Foxy brush.
Yeah.
And you can take it.
It's just
and that's
so
where
fast,
this is
so
a guide
easy.
fly. You can go. But sometimes you don't get enough like with ripple ice in there. So we're going to try to open up our loop and come in there. And then we're going to try to pull our fibers a little bit and then kind of like just pull them apart. And this was just so that our show was longer, Matt.
That's right. I can't hit the fast forward button here.
What is he doing?
Usually do this mostly by hand. Do you ever use a bodkin or anything?
Oh,
Can
no.
pick stuff out?
No,
Okay.
sorry.
That's
But
okay.
that would be a good upsell.
Well, I'll use the bodkin once I spin.
Okay.
Just to,
Okay.
if anything clumps, because
Yeah.
sometimes that ripple ice fiber
Yeah, no, it's going to...
We'll clump a little bit.
Then I just kind of like, I'll do a couple little spins and I'll pull on it. Any questions out there?
Oh, we got people are flying to buy trebles in droves here. Nice. So it's we had an observation about somebody catching fish more with kind of basic setups, you know, with purple and spun deer hair than real elaborate stuff. And I think there's definitely something to that. If it's a confidence fly, it's all about just putting it in front of fish.
Oh yeah. No, so, I mean, I think like anything, especially what would be interesting, like just talking about the deer hair and purple or whatever, is that understanding how low water was. Deer hair is going to give you like an ability to hold that fly at that column level. Right. It'll like come up like a zoo cougar or whatever, you know, so it's like keeping it in that zone as you had a sink tip. That would be a good way to use deer hair, especially in a low clear water year, you know. So no, all good stuff.
Usually stick to those blue eyes.
I was just more like I had blue flash on this one, but I have a whole bag. I could do pink, I could do black, but it was just more like, you know, I'm very like, it's hard for me to match my clothes right. So I thought I actually was doing a good job with the blue ones.
I think it looks great.
Okay.
How often do you, and this is a question from me, how often do you hook your hands here working with the trebles versus single hooks?
Well, that is something I probably actually hurt myself more with the singles, but you know, coming through like right now, I don't want to like come back but
it's all in that combing back motion that just gets you.
The craft fur here is not quite as long as the fly. So.
Oh, we did have someone ask how much are tickets for Muskieville. It sounds like a.
I like that person. That guy's funny, or woman. Sorry.
That would be Jeff Larson.
There you go. Good job, Jeff. Made me laugh.
It's like one of those big concerts in the woods, right? It's kind of set stuff on fire and just shoot stuff up in the UP and.
Oh, I was so proud of Alex too with the hand done whip finish. I was like, oh, he's my hero. Need it.
But Loon does make a great whip.
I know they do. All right, so there's the smaller version. Then we can bust out our marker.
Do you put those barrings on pretty much everything you can, if it's an option?
What I like about it is I don't know. I don't know if it's like that same thing about a confidence thing.
Sure.
You know, but like I know when it came from smallmouth. Now I bring it into steelhead, is that if I break up the flash,
sure,
then it's not quite is blingy. And it was interesting listening to the last week's video with Brian talking about how he was taking flash out of his smallmouth baits. And I was just like, wow, I was adding more flash to my smallmouth baits. And again, it was just, but I was also using more marker in like dulling it out. But like flash would just give me movement in my flies that I just couldn't get.
Right. Flash. Things. And that's a really good point that not many people talk about is those really thin strands of flash offer more than just bling.
Yep.
It's this enticing wiggle movement, especially if you're fishing like we're talking about slower water, where you have smallmouth or steelhead and you're fishing either a hover or a pause or a dangle, and it just gives you that enticing back and forth, up and down movement that, I mean, it's tough to find even in natural materials sometimes. I mean, there's not that many materials that do that. So,
and I think like you hit it right on the head in my mind when you were just talking about it, just like that's why I tie with so much flash for these fish that will respond to it.
Right.
And one fish that I don't tie a lot of flash with is what Alex is fishing for. The majority what his presentation was done is about trout. And it's like I don't bring it into that realm as much because I just haven't had really good success with it. But things that are curious for me, steelhead and smallmouth, is that I can pull them in with the bling, and then if I get the movement, then I'm like, ooh, I got you.
Close the deal.
Yeah.
So. Oh man, we're getting all sorts of questions here. Let's see. Someone wanted to know exactly where fish are with the 2600 CFS change. And we don't have to get into details. I don't even know if we have time for that.
So it does bring up like a good question, and I don't have to give a spot.
Right,
like, I don't
exactly.
have to give a GPS location. All right. So, and help me like portray this correctly because you're better at the whole viewership stuff than I am at. But you have a run, right? So what happened this week at 26? And again, we'll just use them as numbers. Like we were running at 18, and the fish in the corner were either at the deepest part because it was the lowest and clearest, or they were set back right before the lip. That's where the two spots were, deep or right before the lip in your corner.
Sure.
All right. So the water rose up, like it was probably at Bear Creek Ramp when I put in there at 27 that day, it was up 2 tiles on the parking lot. Right. So and those tiles are like 3 foot. So you're like, I'm not sure what it does on the river. Like I don't pay that much attention to it, but it's still fishable. But the fish were so far back in outer space in the tail out or way, way, way up in the head. And because the water was dropping, snow was melting, where are the 2 parts in that river where it's not really being forced or moved in it, right?
Right.
So they were sitting in the glass, but it was fun to fish because your river was already big, but it's like you're looking at your spot, whatever your spot's name was, you're like, all right, I don't need to fish where they were. After you fish 2 or 3 spots and you're just like, all right, the fish are like, it was ridiculously so far back in the run where you're just like, I've never been down here before. And like as a guide, you only get to fish that a couple times probably in your career where that situation sets up where temperature and flow are at that level.
Right.
So you're fishing spots that you had not fished before. And you're throwing into water like you don't know the outcome of your fly. But you're going to go in there because the speed is right. And that brings up a whole different topic in how I fish for things in the winter, is that I'm looking for the right speed. Depth, as the water drops now, depth will play like during the fall and the sun and the amount of boats and the traffic, depth definitely plays a key to where you'll find them. But during the winter, it's all going to be about speed. And sometimes the speed is 10 foot deep and sometimes the speed is 3 foot deep. And I love 3 foot. I fish a lot of 3, and it's like when they're in there and they can see it, and they're gonna bite it.
Yeah, it's a good feeling knowing that fish are seeing your fly.
Yeah,
and that's one of those depths where you're like, if they're there, they are seeing it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
When you come into a 10-foot hole as a fly guy, you're like, I don't know if he knows I'm here. Yeah,
I don't know what else I can do to.
No, so
let's see what else we got. Let's see. Let me scroll here for a second. Hang on, everybody. Just lots of thanks pouring in for all the great info.
Oh, good.
So awesome. Great color combo. Lots of compliments on the fly. Let's see here. A lot of people actually, some people weighing in, they agree with the trebles,
Okay.
minimal impact, less bleeding, less damage than a single big hook.
Sure.
So maybe we'll get some people trying some different things out there, and I mean, you did say barbless, so.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely the metal is really light. So I struggle. You're there October 15th and the water temp is probably 54 degrees. And I struggle with this is when I'm guiding is finding the hook that will stick them. And then that's probably the only one that we're going to hook. And how do we land it without it bending out? And maybe this comes across right, but the Skagit line's so thick and the fish is moving so fast
Right.
that the resistance on the line in the water will bend hooks. So, and I've had back in the day when we had a lot of fish around, I remember one scenario with a really good client where I bent out a hook 4 times in one run. 4 different fish bent me out. And I was just in the right spot at the right time. And that was a lesson that hook doesn't hold at October, whatever it was, 20.
Sure.
And so that's where I came to that 53.77 at size 1. I'm good on my October trip to land that one fish if I get that one grab.
Right.
And then as the season goes, I'll start to the size 2 is a lot lighter. And then these trebles, which if people are open to them, really work on the soft bite, and then they do minimal impact to the fish, but they will not hold. And I run so much wood. The second part about this is that we didn't talk about is that when one of these little guys, like the 3, grabs something,
right.
Piece of wood, you got it. And if you take your 12-pound fluorocarbon at this time of year and pull on it, it'll bend it open, and you just kind of put it back. And I haven't lost a fish on that. Now, the light wire will break, but they're really easy because the treble eye is really big. They're really easy to change right on the river. And the secret little tool is the threader tool by Loon to get that loop up in the eye, pull the through, and then loop it back.
That's smart.
So a little guide tip and an extra reason to carry your threader on the boat if you're into changing your hooks on your swing flies.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of how I think about thread. As light as I can get away with is typically how I approach thread for a lot of flies, unless I need it for a specific occurrence. That October hot fish, I'm going to use the 210 because I need it for that one step, and it's a smart way to think about it. So let's see what else we got. We did have a request for the brand name and size of cotter pin and where you source yours. And I'm going to start, gosh, I guess I need to start packaging.
You should do this.
We get Northern Angler cotter pins.
You should.
Why not?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can buy at the volume that your local home goods store. Oh, I know those cases.
Yeah. So at your local Napa, but I really do think, that, people would love to come in here. You had a little Ziploc bag, pre-bought 20, because not everybody needs 1,000 of them.
No.
So
Goodness,
for me on the 1,000 size, what I get is I get different weights and lengths. And I've used the cotter pins on some of our musky stuff as well, like putting it in the junction because of how heavy it is. So a lot of my steelhead stuff, I'll tend to run as light as I can because a fly without weight flutters better. So the only weight I'm trying to add into the first swing fly is demball eyes, and then I don't have the heavy weight of the hook. But the way I tie, if you ever have, you'll help me out with this, but you ever buy a bad streamer hook that you don't like?
Absolutely.
You can do the same thing.
Yeah.
You can put that streamer hook in here, do the same setup I just did, then come in with a nice pair of cutters, and then get rid of the bend after you're done tying.
Sure.
So, and that's how it all kind of started. that we were tying off some of our bad streamer hooks that were like, I don't know, I'm guilty of buying the 5X long.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And you're just like, yeah, this will work.
This will work great.
Yeah, the fish won't stay on anymore, but I have 8X still
8X looks.
home.
Oh, the Carrie Stevens kind of.
Yeah, but it was just they were like streamer hooks.
Yeah.
And the bends were
Comes
like
in a
that
pack.
big.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, but you can still use them for your swing flies.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, let's start to wrap up here. I want to give you a chance to talk about Mangled Fly really quick, and while I get some stuff set up for the giveaway. Hang on, everyone. We're almost there. Thank you for sticking with us. John's going to talk for just a minute about Mangled Fly, and then we'll wrap her up and give everybody a chance to win.
Yeah. So Mangled Fly is a group of 3 full-time guys, and then we also work with a couple other guys locally. And what I think makes us a little bit different, especially in this area, is that one of our guides, Jeff Topp in particular, has brought a lot of the gear influence to the program. So Ed McCoy and myself are heavy experience into the fly side. And then Jeff is helping us break some of the codes. So, and we're understanding, like, some of my favorite days are fishing with Jeff on like the backwaters of Tippy Pond and seeing how gear works and then developing flies to imitate that gear. So on our YouTube channel, one of the fun videos that we shot was fly versus gear. And we talked about how Jeff goes down the PM and throws his crankbait program and how Ed then brings in a fly. And those comparisons are really important. Like if you want to further your education, this is how you get better, is you understand how fish behave and then what they eat. So we're hoping to do more of that on our YouTube channel and let you guys view some of our thought process behind like catching fish. So, but yeah, we're just 3 full-time guides here in Northern Michigan trying to do what we love. So
nothing wrong with that. A lot of us are doing that. And a lot of us are lucky enough to do that with some really cool support and big support from our customers. I mean, I know you feel the same. We just feel lucky to have such loyal customers, and that's part of the reason we're giving away something cool. So let's see. Yes, John does guide for muskie. We just got a question about that.
Sure.
Best to contact him about details at mangledfly.com.
Yeah, there's a contact page in there that I'll get the email and then I can respond back to it. It's like mandatory fields of your phone number and your email, but I'm happy to answer any questions on what we do, or if there's something that I said. I tend to babble and go off on tangents, so if there's something I confuse you on, feel free to drop me an email and I'll get back to you. So
John's great about getting back to people. It might be at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Don't give me your text number if you don't want to get text at 4. So
use that sleep function on your iPhone.
Yes,
I certainly do.
Smart focus, the focus function of sleep.
Oh, well, awesome. Everyone, thank you so much. The moment you've been waiting for to win an accessory kit. This is an example we got actually from our rep, Ben, our awesome Loon rep, who hopefully will help us convince Loon to do more of these things.
There you go.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Hint, hint. Let's see. So I have just posted the link in the description of this video. You're going to need a phone or a computer. You might have to get creative if you're on your TV. It's the very first thing in the description. It's a Google form, and you're going to basically need to put in your email, your full name, and then it doesn't hurt to go ahead and subscribe to the Northern Angler, Mangled Fly, and Loon. Why not show them some love too as well? They're hooking us all up. And again, if you got questions, leave John or I comments down below. We will answer them long after this thing has been posted to YouTube. Happy to help with that. And we will announce the winner tomorrow when I have time to everything. Cool. YouTube, Facebook, all that. And I'm sure John will share that as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Next week, happy holidays, everyone. Big time. We're not back next week. Actually, we're going to take a holiday break and then we're going to hit it hard. You're going to see the lineup here in just a second.
Very impressive lineup.
It's pretty exciting. So guys have been hounding for years. And then some of our favorite people. So everyone, thanks again for tuning in. Don't ban that person. Wrong button. Ooh. All right, John, wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year. Stay safe.
Stay safe out there. Happy Festivus, everyone. We'll see you next time. If I hit the right button here, let's see. Wrong button.